Brother David Frank Gomes, David G. So we land together here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
What
happy
a
to be
beautiful
here.
way we started. You played this beautiful passage um, that really helped settle us in. And perhaps we can gift our dear viewer listener a few breaths of our silence before we begin. How would that be? We
Yeah,
just hang up with our breath
nice.
and really tune into this moment. Just five or so breaths. So good to be together.
Yeah, it is.
For those who are unknown to David, a quick context setting, just to set the context. Um, David is a coach, mentor, guide to people, executives, leaders, and ordinary people as well. And what I really love about David is that he really embodies this beautiful anecdote by Rumi. And Rumi says, words to the effect, don't just lift up your robes and walk along the water's edge. Strip bare and dive down deep. Love goes deep. So David does not skirt around the edges. He's not for the people who get offended easily or who are hypersensitive or who are very stuck in certain belief patterns. But if you really want to be sincere and go deep, David's the man. He's done amazing work with amazing people. And his specialty is the one-on-one deep dive. And I'm very happy to be one-on-one deep diving with David. And a pleasure
Well,
to
thank
share this
you for
conversation with whoever is listening.
that. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, it's. I've been thinking, a lot about my life and the fact that since I was a young man, really, I've been having these deep conversations with people. First as a hairdresser, which was a very intimate um, job. Um, and then as a filmmaker and a storyteller, and then as a coach and a mentor. So it's very interesting. I really believe in the power of conversation to
Mm,
to to really help us grow and travel together on the road of life. And
mm,
I played that Michael Stillwater recording for you. It's from something called Graceful Passages, because Graceful Passages is a it's just a beautiful CD recording of different wisdom tradition teachers talking about death and dying. And I'm currently doing all my end of life care and taking all that stuff in. So it's been quite emotional, and just to go through all that. Uh, and so I often listen to Graceful Passages because the music is beautiful and the
mm.
teachings are beautiful, and they're just a variety of teachings. Um, and so I thought I would play a bit of that for you.
This could be a good place to start. This beautiful expression, graceful passages. It I find resonates with the death and also resonates with life. Perhaps a sign of successful life is one who's been able to navigate through life. Uh, the passage through life gracefully would be one definition of successful life. How graceful were you throughout the journey? So to me, it speaks to both of life and death. And I'm just wondering what it means for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's this notion for me, anyways, of how do I navigate skillfully through this mystery of both life and what's beyond life. And I think that's I was fortunate that I came to my path and my teacher at a very early age. So that's something that's always been interesting to me. And my wife and I actually worked with a death coach. We worked with a death doula to help us, to guide us through this, because you and I both know it's helpful to have guides. And what she said was really true. We live in a death denying culture, and so in mindfulness we speak a lot about this. In yoga philosophy we speak a lot about it. Not but The Western approach might seem kind of negative, or we're always pushing it away, pushing it down, pretending it doesn't exist. But we have to carry this with us. That is, in fact, how that is the portal into presence, is to realize that at any moment, something can change. And so it's one way to really go much deeper into present moment awareness. So I think it's just interesting to listen to people, embodied teachers who are living a life of spiritual inquiry, and to learn from them. I'm always interested in learning from the different traditions, although I'm completely loyal to my own teacher and my own path.
Mm.
But I love and respect other teachers, and so I like to listen to how they approach this idea of dying, um, because a lot of people come to me wanting to explore their spirituality. So I'm interested in saying, hey, you might find this path interesting. Um, they're all roads up to the same peak, and
Mm.
this is a beautiful expression.
It's funny, we started this conversation with silence, and now we're starting off with death. It's violating all podcast etiquette and how to be popular. Nevertheless, let's roll with it.
Hey, listen to our podcast on death. You're really going to enjoy it.
Not great marketing, but that really speaks to your point. This hang up we have, and even saying the word death, we use words like passage or transitioning and all these things. But really, the word is death. And so it's fascinating that it's been a deep dive into this for me as well in the last month. As perhaps you know, that a dear friend of mine passed away
I did,
in this
yeah.
last month,
Yeah.
and he took his life. So it was particularly tragic in that sense. And the stigma around suicide, and our societal rejection of a death of that kind, or at least presumption
Right.
that one has to suffer tremendously to choose that path.
Right.
And I've been questioning how valid that is.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't. What have you come up with? Like, what has your inquiry led you to believe or understand?
Well, one thing is that the physicality of suicide, it looks so horrific. It looks so tragic that the focus tends to go to the physicality of it. And wise friends like you have helped me see that the real thing is happening in the invisible, in the energetic, in the sacred geometry of life, sort of a thing, of which this is all a part of. It's a part of that tapestry. And and I do know that this friend of mine who passed away had a very strong practice, had a very love-based practice, and I had the chance to read the note he left behind. And the note he left behind was a love letter to himself. We started with, my dearest, you've been through so much. You need to give yourself permission to love yourself truly. And to him, it was an act of compassion towards himself. And I've heard from friends who were close to him at that time that he was listening to sacred music before he passed away. So it feels like a release, a relief of sorts, more than something that uh, obviously he was suffering for sure. There's no doubt about it. He was having difficulty in his life.
Yeah.
Yet that passage, the what I'm focusing on is a tendency in the body and the volition of the mind at the moment of death.
Right.
And from all I have learned is that in that realm, he was in a state of contentment, and the tendency was one of relief.
Right.
And from a yogic perspective, the tendency really, really matters.
Right.
So, to the best of my understanding, is when we die, certainly, if it's physically apparent that the body stays, um, also our thinking faculty switches off, which means our identity, the whole notion of Bhaskar and this and that, all my hopes and ambitions and dreams and projections, hallucinations, beliefs, all that stuff switches off. However, all of that, that whole identity is also a self-regulating system. So, for example, if somebody cuts me off in traffic, I may get frustrated, but then my self-regulating mechanism says, "Hey, Bhaskar, take it easy. He's probably in a hurry. Don't worry about it." So my intellectual capacity diminishes the tendency of frustration I had in me. However, when we die, that functionality is no longer there. That which attenuates the tendency, it goes away. So the tendency with which we die, actually, because it's no longer regulated, the regulating faculty is no longer there, that tendency amplifies and amplifies and amplifies. From a yogic perspective, the tendency in the body, you can call it the emotional content, um, is very important. The energy in the body, the disturbance of the energy in the body, that energy can stay in this gross field for a very long time. It has a difficult time finding another, from a yoga perspective, another womb, sort of a thing. It takes a long, because it stays in this gross form. Um, so, so for many of the Eastern traditions, life is really about the art of dying.
Right.
So when Gandhi was assassinated, the last words were "Hey Ram." He said "Hey Ram," which is his name for God. So that was in his mouth when he passed away. It's a fortuity that that's what came up for him. Um, so so that's what matters. It's really about the art of living has everything to do with the art of dying. So when we die, we're not left with hostile thoughts, unresolved issues. Of course, if it's a violent death, if it's like sudden, like war or being shot or something like this, the tendency seems to be very, very erratic.
Right.
So I've become that much more mindful of preparing myself for the tendency in the body and the time of death.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when a great yogi leaves his body, as my teacher did, it's a maha samadhi. It's a
Mm.
final conscious exit from the body. So, and my teacher Yogananda spoke of how he would die, said how he would die, and that's how he died. He finished
Exactly.
a lecture and gently fell to the ground, put his eyes at the spiritual eye. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the body is a vehicle and there is this hidden soul within it. And each person has their relationship to the divine, and each person's continuity of life, whether here or in the next world, that's a very personal relationship, and no one is lost forever. But I'm always saddened by hopelessness because I think hopelessness is something that is so rampant in our society, in spite of all the comforts we have. And so it's difficult because you know you don't see people on the street walking around going, "I'm depressed." They actually do exactly the opposite. They put the mask on and say, "I'm wonderful. I'm great. Everything is perfect." And so, that part of it does sadden me. I don't feel I could have any moral judgments about how someone leaves the world. But I agree. I mean, everything I know about it is, you know, the more clear your consciousness is in the final moments, the better. The more peaceful it is, the better. And um, everybody hopes to have a good death, I think, and as well as a good birth. And in between those two events, there's this mysterious thing called life. and what do we want to do with it? And I think that I remember the very first words that I ever read by my teacher, which sort of led me to my path. And he said mankind is engaged in an eternal quest for that something else he hopes will bring him happiness, complete and unending. For those individuals who have sought and found God, the search is over. He is that something else. And I just deeply believe that no matter what we're up to, that's what we're seeking. We're seeking this infinite joy, this infinite happiness, this infinite wisdom within us. And our world external, we end up very externalized. We're always looking outside for everything. And so that creates a lot of despair. And so
Mm.
we're living actually in a time not only of great wealth and success and connection and all these things and technology, but there's a tremendous amount of despair and hopelessness. And
Let's look at
you
that.
know
Let's
that
look at that
that's
hopelessness and the mask we put on. Let's peel that onion a little bit.
yeah,
Why do we do this? Why do we project this image that I'm successful when my life might be falling apart, or I'm happy when 90% of the life is unhappy, you know? Um, and what comes up for me is the word safety. Um, I don't feel safe
right.
expressing myself honestly. That's why I put on this mask.
Well, yeah, I think that's a symptom.
Mm,
At birth, O Arjuna, all beings are immersed in delusion. Like it's been set up this way. It's this illusion that has been carefully crafted to keep us looking. And so um, the energy is being used in the senses and it's being pushed out.
mm.
And so we could say that's the law of repulsion, or the law that pushes everything out and creates this movie. And then there's another force. That's the force of attraction that is drawing everything back. And that's love.
All
And
right,
so, you
all right.
know,
So
safety is a
here's
part of it, but once we start to reverse the energy, and this is what pranayama is about. It's about, prana means
mm,
energy, yama means control. It's
yeah.
about this
Instead of
reversing of the energy,
dispersing it, you enhance, circulate, and extend instead of dispersing. Very, very true.
which creates a feeling of psychological safety among other things, because you
Mm,
start to feel enveloped in this loving presence that is beyond words. One can only experience it. It cannot be explained. Even the greatest teachers are misunderstood. Even the greatest teachers are crucified. Like but I think that is the way to change. And it doesn't mean that we don't go out into the world and do great things. I think we all want to achieve things in the world. We were built for that. But I think we have to keep a portion of our consciousness inside.
I sense a lot of our work is creating an ambience, a safe space for people to put down their mask and look authentically and honestly at what's happening under the hood, if you will. And what many things draw you to me, but one thing in particular that I find remarkable about you, which you don't see in most life coaches and organizational development, culture creation, people, is that you dive right into the word love. The first time we encountered, I was in a group of highly credible people, experts in their field, all uh, in that life coaching industry. And you stepped right and said, "Hey guys, it's all about love." you know, we have to be willing to go there. And so you go into God, you go into love, you go into all this stuff in very conventional environments. Um, and I just love that about you. I just want to know that I love that about you, that you go there when most people will play the game of diplomacy and veil love as performance enhancement or executive excellence and all these terms. But fundamentally, you're like, stop complicating this. It's about love.
I remember that conversation because I was a little shocked when the conversation came up that you know, yeah, we all know it's about love, but you know that's going to be a hard sell. And that was just, that's a line I can't cross. Like if love is a hard sell, then count me out. It's just not, you know, then you're just part of the illusion.
That's the David T-shirt. This love is a hard sell, count me out. That's your mantra. I love it. So all right. Um, love. That's to quote our dear Tina Turner. What's love got to do with it? What's love got to do with operational excellence and all that good stuff?
It's
How
very
does love affect
interesting.
the bottom line?
It's interesting in a secular culture that we separate these things and divide them, um, as if being spiritual and being successful are simply not possible. So it's, as you like to say, it's like a but, like you can either do this or either do that. Whereas you are the and guy. You're always like and or, which is powerful. And so, you know, I think that's something that we need to explore, but we also need to explore this idea of endless growth, which is really just the ideology of a cancer cell. And we have all collectively kind of agreed to this. And I think we are now moving into a phase where we're realizing it simply doesn't, it isn't working. And we all kind of know that in our heart. And we're feeling this collective suffering of the world, the weather, the poverty, all these things. We're collectively feeling it. And yet we're still sort of looking at the same old paradigms. And so this is a paradigm shift, right? We're shifting out of that. And it doesn't mean we have to throw away, you know, if you want a BMW, great. Go get one, you know. So I'm not trying to minimize what people are here to do, but I'm saying I think we could develop a kinder, more thoughtful way of being human.
Just to clarify, to the dear listener or viewer, I'm an also and guy, and also and is my thing.
Also, and
Also
sorry.
and yes. So let's look at what would also and look like. So I think a lot of concern in conventional settings is, hey, we make this widget. That's what we do, or we sell this widget. We are not, you know, this is not about love. This is about functioning properly and making our ends meet so we can support you guys financially and build a company. That's what we're about. Um, and you know, for me, as you were speaking, the metaphor of tennis just came up really strong, like you know, like an arena where you want to achieve excellence. And I remember reading this autobiography of a very famous tennis player called Andre Agassi. And the very first line in the book is, I hate tennis. The first line in the book is, I hate tennis. So his father forced him to play tennis since he was a little kid. And he achieved greatness, but he hated every moment of it. By the end of it, his body was completely broken and he couldn't wait to retire.
Huh.
And so although he got the accolades and he got the titles, the journey was so brutal. And then you hear the story of people like Serena and Venus Williams. They love tennis, and their father nurtured the love. And you know, so they also obviously achieved excellence, but the journey was so different.
Yeah.
So it's not about not achieving excellence; it's about the graceful passage through or towards that excellence. Do you want
Yes.
to be broken and frustrated and irritated every single day and be excellent? There's the option of actually thriving in that process and still have the same results. So what would the also and look like of profit love?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I love the way you put it. It's beautiful. It's, you know, they call them cliches, but that's because they're true. The journey is the destination. So my process is built on process. It's not built on outcome. So that's stage one.
Mm, mm,
You know, obliterate outcome. There is no outcome. Like just throw it away. Imagine there's no outcome. There's simply the next beautiful step you're taking. I think the second thing is sort of deciding mindfulness is an ecosystem of practices, but there's a philosophical aspect of it, and so I think we have to have a perhaps we need to develop a new relationship to money. To like, why are we here? And we're not here just to collect coins and put them in banks and count them. We're here to make our money have meaning, you could say, or the time we're here, we want to leave the world, a little better, a little kinder, a little more loving. So I think we have to probably put it into a much bigger context, right?
Mm, mm.
When something isn't important to you, you don't focus on it, right? And so you meet all kinds of people, and people are focused on different things that they claim are very important to them.
Mm, mm.
But having worked with very, very successful people, much more successful than me, know much more about money and how to make it and how to save it and grow it. Um, they're human beings. They have the same problems that everyone else has. We have to let go of these fantasies. We have to stop chasing the fantasies, you know? And there's a lot of fantasy around this stuff. And so um, mindfulness is about facts, not fiction. And
Yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah.
it's I'm not exactly sure. I don't have the answer for that question.
So what I'm feeling is that profit has a very distinct value. If you've profited $10, that $10 has very distinct market value based on other currency and all that kind of stuff. It's very distinct. So this is the one thing about profit, that yet love is as valuable as the value you give it. If you give love no value at all, it has no value. And if you give it fundamental value, it has immeasurable value. So there is that difference, I find, that uh, profit, at least a society that we've built, is always going to be screaming and shouting, urgent, important. Love doesn't scream and shout. you know, it's never going to be urgent, important. It's going to be, it's going to whisper quietly, yet it's very subtle and very deep reaching. And ultimately, like you said, that's where this pursuit of happiness lands you.
Yeah, it's funny, because that reminds me of something that's, people go to a bank, and what do you put in a bank? You take pieces of paper like this, and you put it in the bank, and you diamonds and gold and stocks and bonds, and you put them in little boxes. But really, what should you go to a bank and deposit? Actually, drinking water would be good. I'd like to deposit some drinking water in case I need it later. I'd like to deposit some fruit and vegetables because I might want to eat them, and so I want to keep them safe. I want to deposit some love and kindness because I may need it when things get tough. Like, the actual things we say are valuable, that they are in one sense. Like, we're in a physical body in time and space. We have to do all these things. But nobody does anything alone,
Mm,
right? Of what value is anything? And everything is being exchanged at every moment. We're talking, I'm exchanging this, I'm giving this. And so, in one sense, if we just stopped this I and just sort of saw it all as like something flows to me, I take care of it for a little while, I pass it on to Bhaskar. Oh,
mm,
he can do something with it. And so, in one sense, I feel like my clients are helping me. They're helping me to live my life. I'm helping them in a different way. They're exchanging some money, I'm giving them some support. And so, maybe if we started to see it as just this endless exchange of energy,
mm,
we could be a
mm.
little less obsessed about, um, baubles and things.
Yeah, clinging to the ownership. So what I'm hearing is that love allows us to see more clearly this beautiful, rich fabric of interdependence,
Hmm.
not just with each other, but with all sentient beings. That
Hmm.
we're all part of the same fabric, and just this sort of almost mystical notion is no longer mystical. It becomes very practical. You sense it deeply, that it's all interconnected, and also that the law of nature, where the act of seeing it and sharing in the way that you've expressed this generosity is deeply fulfilling. If
Hmm.
I have something and I feel something that will benefit you, it's a small thing for me to offer it. It is such a small thing for me, but such a big thing for you. This is what you call great karma points. Wow, I feel so good. You know, in our family, we practice these random acts of generosity just for kicks, and we do it because it just feels really good. It's just simple stuff, but it just feels really good. It's not expensive, but you this ideally anonymous acts of generosity. It's so deeply nourishing, and suddenly you realize, oh, that's what life is about. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, and I think I feel that all people really are looking for, they're all seeking their spiritual connection, but we've mistaken sort of religiosity, which I would say is the non mystical traditions.
Mm,
So I'm part of a mystical tradition, you could say, because my teacher was a great mystic. But mysticism is in a sense direct personal experience. And so once you connect to that, as you were saying, like suddenly you start to see things in a different way. And so this is what everyone is seeking, this
mm,
direct experience of these things, not the conceptual experience, not reading about it in a book, not taking a course. It's the direct experience of it. And
mm,
unless and until society becomes that, as our consciousness, each person elevates, then there's no ultimate problem solving in
mm,
politics and business. Like, this isn't where the solutions come from. They come from within ourselves, the elevation of our consciousness. And this is happening on an evolutionary scale, it's happening on an individual scale.
mm,
So if you want tools to accelerate that, well, that you're using one of them very skillfully.
mm.
Yoga, meditation, the great wisdom traditions. This is
I
this
feel
is
that. I feel it in myself, as not just a teacher, as a practitioner, how this deep sense of connection, love, interdependence, or I would say sameness, at least with other human beings, that how 1 millimeter under the skin, we're exactly the same. We're
yeah,
exactly the same. The way we feel, the way we think, the way we digest our food, circulate our blood, all that stuff, my needs, my aspirations, so much of it. You travel around the world, you realize fundamentally, we have so much more in common. Um, and when we tap into that field of interdependence, I find we make a very surprising discovery that there is actually a collective intelligence that you can tap into, which is way more powerful than this tiny brain. When I get into a flow state with somebody, suddenly it's no longer two intelligences playing ping pong. It becomes one exponentially higher intelligence. And then you put
yeah,
more into it, then suddenly there's a collective intelligence we can access that you simply cannot access with this hierarchical top-down structure relying on one brain. Um, so there's something else. Love helps you see a very powerful, non-localized intelligence that's just waiting to be discovered. Um, just like the swales, the birds, how they move together and create these beautiful patterns. I think it's called murmuring. And then you have these schools of fish doing all these things together, just without a word being uttered, without any orders or prescriptions, just this spontaneous intelligence, the same kind of spontaneous intelligence that's somehow organizing 50 trillion cells to create this physical body, this
yeah,
living system.
yeah.
And then, so there is that. There is the interdependence allows us to also see there is a profound intelligence, an orchestrating or organizing principle that is there to be tapped into.
Yeah, and I think it's even on a very practical level, it's the just like me meditation, right? When you're looking into the eyes of someone, they are just like me. Like, it's a way of lowering tension and anxiety and fear and worry, because you realize that everyone is just like you. They're all seeking love. They all want, a life that feels good, that feels significant. They want love. They want to have the things they need. We're all sort of in the same boat in that in that way. And we all have a collective understanding of the human condition of suffering. We're all part of it. We're bodies in time and space. We're aging. Um, People we love leave, things like that. And so, it's there's a dream-like quality to this world, and that's a meditation that I use regularly. I try, because my teacher has taught me that, because that's how he saw the world. He saw the world as movies. The world is a world of movies. It's a world of dreams. And if you enter into that, you're doing it every night when you sleep. Every night you become a god. Every night you become infinite. And then you wake up and you're you. You're a man. You have this problem. You have this joy. And so every night we become great yogis. And so I think that is a wonderful technique, is to kind of see the world as a dream, and you're a dream in a dream. And so it's a way of maybe wearing it all a little less loosely. I'm like everyone else. Occasionally I find myself I get very immersed in things, and then I sort of stop and go, whoa, what's happening here? Like, where did you just go?
Whoa,
you
whoa,
know?
whoa, brother. There's so much there, so much there. Wow. Um, let's go to that just like me meditation. I find asserting and affirming this is very helpful.
Yeah.
That the janitor, the CEO, the secretary, the whatever, the foreman, the IT person, just like me.
The baby.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to my tennis analogy because it's very simple. Tennis is just distilled down between those lines. But when I first started playing tennis, I was very competitive. I did not like to lose. I really wanted to win, and I really wanted to hit that great shot and dominate this kind of a thing. And as I'm maturing in my life,
You and Agassi.
yeah, but as I'm maturing in my life, I realized that the other person across the net also wants to hit great shots, just like me. you know, the other person across the net also wants to win, just like me. So
Yeah.
what happens is, instead of working against that person, we are working together to create this great experience for both of us. And no matter who hits a great shot, we're both extremely happy, that we were able to co-create that experience. So if that other person is a great shot, it's like, wow, that's a great shot, and I know how good it must have felt to hit the sweet spot and hit the ball down the line so perfectly. That must have felt really good. And I take joy that felt so good. It really doesn't even matter who hit it anymore. So it's almost like that you are co-creating that experience with that person. And from tennis we get to zennis, where it just becomes one thing that you are co-creating together. It's extremely blissful. And the scoreline does not matter, yet you're still fully involved, fully engaged, doing your best, uh, with this undercurrent of co-creation, and not competition. So this might be a way how competition, you can still get very similar results, but without the tightness, without the enemy, because that person there is just like me. So no matter who wins, you can genuinely go and give the person a big hug if they want, or get a big hug if you want. It doesn't matter, because you just had a great experience together.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's that's beautifully put. And it's it's very powerful, and like all powerful modalities, it's so simple most people miss it. It slips through their fingers. It's too simple to be. But once the I-ness is gone, then what are you looking at in the other tennis player? You're looking at yourself. You're looking at the divine. So in one sense, it actually makes you play better
You got it.
because
I
you're
tell you, my
less.
friend, it's so true. It is so true, because first of all, physically, I'm looser because I have no horse in the race. I'm just, we are co-creating, so I don't have an enemy. I have nothing to prove to anybody.
Yeah.
And it just allows me to see more clearer, and just take everything in stride, so my mind doesn't get stuck in some unpleasant thing that just happened, or gets all tight about something that might happen. I can totally be with that moment. because I'm literally playing, to your point earlier, without any goal. It's just to play a really good game. Yes, there is a score. Yes, someone's going to win in the end. That's all right. But where attention goes, energy flows. And the attention, if it goes towards actually co-creating a magnificent experience, then suddenly the results kind of take care of themselves. It's almost like you can't play tennis with your eyes on a scorecard. You're going to hopeless tennis player. You got to have your eye on the ball, you know, this sort of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it says something like that in the Tao Te Ching, and the master doesn't compare and compete. That's why her work lasts forever, and she's respected. And I think, when you look at a great tennis player or a great scientist or a great yogi or artist or anybody, they all they all have one thing in quality, or in sort of universality, is this ability to concentrate on something, right? Like, it's this
Mm,
deep ability to concentrate. And what helps you to concentrate and focus your mind? What you need to have, some kind of a technique, but you also need a philosophy to wrap it
mhm.
in.
I almost feel it's like a selfless quality.
Mm-hmm.
This notion of just like me invites a dissolving of a self-centered quality to become more selfless, or you could say more empathic, or compassionate, and that loosens up the jam up in the circuitry, of genius.
When this eye shall die, then shall I know who am I. Yeah, I mean, it's death to the eye, right? Like, that's how you, once you take yourself out of the get yourself out of it, and then the divine can pour itself in. And what is the divine? Omnipotence,
Death,
omnipresence.
death to the eye. This is yeah. I'm reminded of a friend of mine. He's a senior. He was the CEO of a massive company, one of the top companies in the world. Retired now, and there's a beautiful story around it. But nevertheless, he finds himself in a little village in India. He's like a retired CEO of a major company, wearing a loincloth and bicycling to his teacher in India, called Tuli Baba. And Tuli Baba does not speak a word of English. So, but he's mesmerized by this saint. And then he asks this saint, "Please take me as a disciple. You know, I want to study under you." And Tuli Baba, through a translator, says, "I will take everything from you. I will take everything from you." Okay, so not talking about money, not this, but take the eye, which is everything. I'll take that eye from you. To which my friend responded, "Go ahead, take it."
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the need to prove and defend and promote that comes with the eye that's just gotta go for excellence to flow.
Yeah, and it's a very powerful force, right? I mean, it was created. I mean, this idea of Maya, or the veils, or illusion, whatever you want to call it, it's a powerful force. The moment you incarnate on this planet, you are part of it. And so, it's a gradual, it's like a reversal of the energy, right? And so, every time you add to that bank account, you're adding to your personal happiness, you're adding to your spiritual growth. So I just think it's important to pay a little bit of attention to your inner life as well, and that's something that's it requires a certain degree of courage and fortitude, because this world is very diffusing. It diffuses our consciousness, and it gets us.
Very much, and also very enamored by this to these distractions. Um,
Yeah, I mean, they just keep coming up with more and more fabulous distractions,
have you
right?
seen the new metaverse demonstration introduction with Mark Zuckerberg, dear Zuckerberg?
I didn't see it, no.
Well, you might want to check it out. At least the first 2 minutes, you'll get an idea of it. So you put on these glasses, and suddenly you can be in any reality you want to be in. And I guess what I'm saying is that technology is advancing, progressing so rapidly. So it seems that this kind of perennial wisdom and what you said, nuance and subtlety and rise in consciousness is so important because that consciousness is right now creating reality that's being so amplified globally because of technology and this global village. So the technology is only as good as the consciousness. So the knife is not dangerous. It's only as dangerous as the hand that holds it,
Right.
which is, so the knife is the intelligence and the hand is the wisdom. So if the wisdom is not there, then this knife becomes very dangerous. If the wisdom is there, the knife becomes very helpful.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we have all these technological behemoths, brilliant, intelligent people, trillionaires and all this kind of stuff who are creating a reality. And I wonder how wise is that hand that holds this very, very powerful sword, and how it matters more in these times.
Well, that's an interesting point because if you look closely at technology, say the internet even, or it's a very crude and subtle interpretation of God, because
Hmm.
it's it's everywhere and nowhere. You can't see it, but it's omniscient, and you can go and get as much information as you want. It's kind of a very crude approach by what I would say are sort of people who they've tapped into something that's already there. It's all there, and they're discovering it. And it's a very crude first step at what actually exists in the consciousness and minds of every sentient being. And it's what
Mm.
we're all going to find one day within ourselves. So I agree with you. It's a mirroring, and in our world, we need the there's a value to countervailing forces, right? Like for every force, there's an opposite force. So it's important that there are voices out there that are speaking about these things, because if not, if there's no voice, if there's no one you can follow, if there's no teachers, um, if there's no wisdom traditions to sort of walk in, like, then we would be lost, because imagine a world without philosophy, without poetry, without paintings, without art, without beauty.
Well,
I
Yuval
mean,
Harari, there's a famous author, he wrote *Sapiens*. He makes the point that before philosophy was, you could take your time with it. You could discuss Socrates and Plato, and years can go by, decades, lifetimes. You don't make a decision, doesn't matter. But now, philosophy has become critical because that's what's programming the AI. There's now the need for subtler understanding has become very practically urgent and important because that's going to determine the algorithms that we program the stuff into. And if it's very crude and misaligned, then suddenly you're creating algorithms that can just lead to exponential dystopia because the foundation, the building block was set with a misunderstanding. So
yeah, now we've come back to profit, because the algorithm is about profit. So of course the algorithm is working. It's generating chaos, because if the operating principle is that which is unreal, profit and all this stuff that is, you can't take with you, then of course. And so we're literally seeing that unfold. And what is culture? What is society? It's a collective set of beliefs. We've all decided, okay, well, let's go along with it. Whole industries would literally go out of business overnight
if
if
you just
people woke up and had a moment. The cosmetic industry would go away. People would just think, what, makeup? Or like expensive creams, like I'll just, I'll wash my face with some water.
be careful now. We have we want to entice some nice sponsors to these
Oh
conversations.
yeah.
Don't chase them away now.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm not opposed to
I'm just
that stuff,
joking.
but
I'm just joking.
it is fascinating to sort of, like, I wonder what it would be like if collectively, the whole world were to sit down and meditate together. Like if every human being just sat down in the world and meditated together for 1 hour, and the whole world just got quiet and everybody just let go. I wonder what miracle would take place, because something miraculous would happen. I don't know what it would be. like the air would become clean, the water would become clean, like something miraculous would happen.
Mind would become clean. And like you said, it starts with the individual. If we all had a, maybe not the exact same time, but still, if we all had a morning practice, 24 hours, just 10 minutes. If a tipping point majority had a practice of connecting with source, connecting with self, connecting with breath, and all of this very simple stuff, profound change. Why isn't this standard in every school, every institution, every organization, every company? It's a miracle. Every household, just 10 minutes, really, of basic mental hygiene. I've always wondered that myself. But let's go. I'm going to switch channel now to something else you pointed out. This channel about this dreamlike quality. Let's go there. This is something I find fascinating as well. The movie Matrix kind of pointed to that a little bit. There's this notion that this reality is fabricated. There's not a reality, although that reality was dystopic in the movie. But nevertheless, this notion that there is a movie-like quality to life. It is such incredible, profound, detailed, and nuanced. It's just magical. Yet I've always felt that movie-like quality. So, when I meet people, I rarely say, "How are you?" It's more like, "How's David?" So I want to hear the David story. How's the David movie going? It's
Right.
almost like we are, yeah, from a yogic perspective, it's the Maya. It's this illusory quality of life, which, every now and again you can get access to it. We get so sucked in to the movie that we forget that we're actually watching the movie now, or we are the watcher of the movie. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the example that I love, was something I learned from Paramahansa Yogananda, and I was literally just listening to this the other day, and he said, once he said that he used to like to go to movies occasionally because it would give him a chance to go into samadhi, into ecstasy with God, and it would be quiet. But he would often take them to strange, like horror movies or war movies. And he talked about this analogy of being in the movie theater. And he said the only reason he really liked to go to movies is because he saw the whole world as movies. And he said, you're sitting and you're watching on the screen, and there's this horror picture, and people are being killed and murdered and screaming. And he's like, and then you look up and you see the beam, one beam. And then you look back and you see there's a little room, there's a projector, and there's a man reading a book, and he's projecting the movie. And he says, that's the projector of the universe. He's reading his novel and he's thinking about new movies to project. And so when you look at the screen, it seems like a horror show, but when you look at the beam, you realize it's all shadows and light. And so, you know, if you're just looking at the screen, it's really hard to see the truth. But if you look up at the beam,
Oh
you
yeah.
can see, and how do you look up at the beam? Meditation. You go within yourself over and over again until you start to see the beam. You start to see the beam everywhere. And this is why the great mystics, the great awakened beings, can practice unconditional love, because they're not looking at Bhaskar. They're looking at light. They're looking at love. They're looking at a beam of light. And they see the divine, which is, it's incredible to have someone in your life that loves you unconditionally. That's not something you find in the human world. And so this is how the great ones are able to transform the lives. The guru is the greatest giver among men, because they see equality in the disciple, and they are awakening the sleeping God in the disciple. They're no better or worse. They're just they just have an awakened presence. And so that, to me, is how you actually get to the dream, right? You start to realize every time you look at a person, you practice this. This is Hindu philosophy. It's yogic philosophy. You don't see the other person. You see the divine, carefully disguised as a handsome young man like yourself, or a dog, or a tree, or a rock, or a car, or a chair. It
The
could be
guru
anything.
whispers in your ear, "Hey, look up. It's just a
Yeah,
beam." Or look inside. Yeah.
yeah. Because if you don't, it is a frightening world. I mean, and there is a lot, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
minimizing that there is suffering in this world. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
there is. But you know, there's something else going on,
There's something else going on.
and it's our job to find out what that something else is. And that is
We started with death. Let's land with death. I'm going to ask you this question. It's a random question. Say you are in the last few breaths of your life. The David story is about to end. And someone very near and dear to you is sitting beside you and is saying, David, before you pass away, you only have a few breaths left. What did you learn about life? You know, what can you share with me that, that would help me understand? What comes up for you? What would you say to this person?
well, I've already gone through all that with my death doula. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. Honestly, I would probably, with my dying breath, I would probably give, I would point to my teacher, to his picture, and say, it's all about finding that love within ourselves, and finding it within ourselves, expressing it without. That's the purpose of life. You know, I don't really know how else to put it. I consider myself to be a very simple person. I have a simple life, and I just want to find that divinity, that love within myself. That's the goal of my life. That's all I'm really interested in. And out in the world, I'm trying to be of service. So love and service would probably be the two things I'm trying to really focus on. And sometimes it's very, very challenging. I definitely find this modern marketing world, like I really struggle with even trying to explain what it is I do for a living, and how I authentically try and put that out in the world. So I feel a great kinship with my brothers and sisters out in the world. It's we're all doing our best.
As I do for you. It's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. So thank you, dear viewer listener. Deep breath and appreciation for you, David G.
Pranams. Yeah, thank you. I love what you're doing. I think it's nice just to have these kind of conversations and without any great plan.
Yeah, great things without great plans.